I was absolutely stunned by the advice Dave Ramsey just gave to one of his listeners on his radio show.
Don't buy a house, and we've said this for 30 years. This hasn't changed. And it'll help you get the house, by the way, until you get out of debt. Don't buy a house where you have to buy an extra bedroom for Sally Mae.
What he doesn't tell this person is the type of homes that you should never, listen to me, never buy at all. There are plenty of different type of homes that you should not be buying when you are looking to upsize or buying a bigger house. So let's start with what my preference will be. First thing is, you should never buy a house that is that old. Even if it has the square footage that you're looking that will fit the wants and needs of your family, I will not buy homes that are 50, 75, or 100 years old, to be honest with you. Only because there's certain things. Number one, plumbing issues. So I wouldn't be buying old homes because of all the plumbing issues. Lead pipes actually are a big concern among a lot of communities because how old these pipes have been installed when these communities were developed many years ago, that there is a huge growing concern that you could have some issues because all the metal particles that you can be ingesting when you drink water. So I will definitely not buy that. Not only that, but the time is going to come for you to do some repairs, and that's just really going to cost you a lot of money. Electrical problems, okay? Kind of like on the same boat. A lot of houses nowadays have very old panels that are not good any longer. They don't meet like the safety standards. Yeah, when the house was built back then, it was great, but not necessarily. And you say, well, Robert, but some of these homes are in good locations. We really like it, but they haven't upgraded a lot of these things. Well, you have to take that in consideration. If they have not been done, then you have to take that into consideration when you're going to buy a house of this kind. So problem with all the wiring, for example, you can have aluminum wiring in some of these homes. Replacing aluminum wiring on a 4,000 or 5,000 square feet home, it's very pricey, very costly. Here in Maryland, we use something called copalum. It's a lot more affordable than doing a full change of the wiring, but it's still very expensive, and it's Band-Aid, right? It's not necessarily a full-blown solution. So just keep that in mind. There's also recalls of a lot of these electric panels that have some, safety hazards, fire hazards, and so on. So keep in mind, if you're doing your home inspection, ask your inspector to tell you if the panel, the main box, it's on the kind of recall list, because that's very important for you to know right now. And up front, asbestos, yes, replacing asbestos. Asbestos are well known in these houses that were built 75, 100 years ago that are very pricey. Here in Maryland, oh my gosh, it can really cost you between $12,000 up to like $30,000. It all depends on the area that you are going to be removing the asbestos. It used to be in the past that as long as you can put carpet on top of it and you don't scratch the asbestos, you'll be fine. But I'm more of a believer that a full-blown encapsulation and removal of the asbestos should be the right solution. Other things that you also encounter in older house that you encounter in older homes, it's going to be very steep staircases that are not safe, very short razors or long razors on the steps that are not good for you, so you can very easily miss and step, and if they're very steep, can be a big accident, especially if people that are older people are going to be living in the property, meaning like you're going to bring your parents living with you and so on. Culturally speaking, there are cultures that will probably do those things, so got to be careful with that. Low ceilings, it's another big issue, especially for basements. Non-working smoke detectors, it's also another big issue. Or CO detectors, they're not in compliance and haven't been wired for a lot of these things. And especially if you really want to update your property with technology, some of like Wi-Fi things sometimes don't work well. If you want to have like a camera, security system, or like a doorbell camera, you encounter definitely a little bit more issues as you want to upgrade these type of homes. I will never, ever, especially if you have little kids, buy a house that does not have a radon mitigation system in place. I will never buy one of those. Whether it's an active or a passive one, you need to have some radon mitigation system. Remember, radon is a gas that is 8 times heavier than oxygen, so tends to sit on the lower levels of any house. So a house with a basement that is typical here in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, most likely you're gonna find it in the basement. And Maryland is well known for having a lot of radon, so you definitely want to do that. Ballpark on doing a full radon remediation on a 4,000 to 5,000 square feet home, you're probably looking as low as $1,000 as high as $1,800. It all depends how many fans the house is going to need and all the kind of the pipes that need to be connected. But I will never buy a house that does not have a radon. And if you're going to be buying a house that you know has tested high for radon, you might want to have the seller remediate while you are in the process of all contingencies. Here in Montgomery County, Maryland, it's mandatory for sellers to give a disclosure to potential buyer of the levels of radon presence in the property. Doesn't mean they have to remediate, only have to disclose. Let me know in the comments below here if in your area you are required to do a radon test and give a disclosure to a potential buyer. So let's keep moving forward. Houses that are close to a flood zone. Okay, that's a very hot topic nowadays because it has to do a lot with the issues that are, people in Florida are experiencing. So definitely insurance cost when you live near a body of water, it's going to be very high premiums. In some cases, your deductibles are through the roof. So I recently was hearing this case that this person was telling me that their deductible is $18,000. They have full coverage, but their deductibles, that means they're going to have to eat up $18,000 of their own money to do the repairs in order for the insurance to kick in. And the insurance is not cheap. The insurance you're talking is like $2,000 a month. So got to keep that in mind. If you are in the process of looking at a piece of property that is near a body of water, check with a good insurance agency before to give you some numbers so that way you have no issues. Another thing is that the flood risk, right? Flooding happens here and there in certain areas more than in others, and there is really no guarantee. So flood insurance is very expensive too. So just try to stay away from floodplains that that can potentially flood at some points. Just be careful with those things. Unpredictable weather, right? Just don't know with the increase of tornadoes, storms, hurricanes. You just really know when you are going to need this kind of insurance, and being near a body of water makes it more difficult and more expensive for certain people. So just do your due diligence before investing in a type of home that way. But as it is for upgrading as a peace of mind for your family, maybe you want to stay away from that if you can at some point. There are parts of here, like you just want to say Boca Raton, you cannot do those things because you're most likely close to the water. But don't buy the house that is on the first row. Maybe just buy a couple rows inside so that you're not too exposed when it comes to hurricanes and things of that nature. In addition, there are no guarantees that, because they already had flooding once, that it's not going to happen again. So you definitely want to make sure that you do your due diligence. FEMA, I think, has a really nice map that you can look online that talks about the different areas and potential of flooding. And I know they keep updating those maps quite often, so good idea for you to check that map. Another areas is just gotta take geographic considerations of this, right? Like, for example, here in Maryland, if you want to live near Ocean City, Maryland, or the Chesapeake Bay, for sure you are definitely gonna have to pay a little bit more. Or if you're building a house right next by the Potomac River here in Washington, D.C., McLean area, definitely you really want to make sure that you cover your bases when it comes to having these kind of things. So again, flooding is just a risk, and sometimes it goes 100 years without having any bad floods, but then all of a sudden you can have one after the other, and then just adds really to the cost of owning a house. So if you're upsizing, you do due diligence. Let me know here in the comments if you have had any thoughts of upsizing in the near future, and if you are attracted to houses that are near a body of water, or you definitely want to stay away based on what you know that is happening in Florida and how insurance companies are acting with future homeowners. So let's continue. When you are buying a bigger home, when you are upsizing into a bigger home, there is a chance that you also need to be selling your current house. Whether you're coming from a condominium, a townhouse, a one-level property, or just a rambler, and you going into that big, 3-level house and so on, you definitely want to make sure that you are not making the mistake. Number one, your house has to be ready to go on the market. Yeah, your primary house, if you're going to be selling and buying at the same time, because that's the only way you can afford to make it happen, you got to make sure your primary house is ready to go on the market. By being ready, I'm talking, you have to do your decluttering, your staging has to be completely done before you even start looking for a new house, right? Any repairs that are needed or upgrades have to be done immediately. Things like water leaks under the counters, kitchen sink leaks in the bathrooms, like loose toilets, missing shingles, and siding, and all those things actually has to be in good repair, so that way you can really know that you can go on the market at the same time that you can be buying and be competitive on both ends. The financial coordination, you have to manage the financial coordination of this whole thing, because you're going to be selling one, getting the proceeds from one, and then buying the other one. So your lender should know what you're trying to do. It's also a good idea that maybe try to use the same settlement company if you can. Although here in Maryland, the buyer is the one that chooses the settlement company, but it's a good idea that you can coordinate that so that you can transfer the money can even sit in one, especially if you're having back-to-back settlements on the same day or 24, 48 hours apart. It's a good idea you're doing those things. Immediately, as soon as you settle on your first home, your lender wants to have a copy of what is called the final settlement statement. So you really want to have access to that information immediately so that your lender can know what's happening, right? And of course, timing. Timing is everything. In average, a house that once it hits the market and it goes under contract, assuming that you're going to sell on the first weekend, it will probably take you between 25 to 40 days to go to settlement. So if you are also going to be buying into it, it's a good idea that you kind of build yourself some time, maybe a rent back or what is called a post-settlement occupancy on your primary house. So after you settle, you can stay in that house for another 30, 60 days. I don't know how what's in your state. In the state of Maryland, the maximum allowed is 60 days. After 60 days, you kind of fall into the landlord-tenant guidelines, which is a whole nother thing. So we don't like to go there, but those are the things that definitely you want to make sure that you have worked out with the people that it's helping you sell a house. Otherwise, you have that famous catch-22. You either own two houses at the same time or you own nothing. So be careful with that. Another type of property that I will never upsize to is properties that have been flipped by an LLC, investors. There is nothing against investors, guys, okay? There is nothing against them, but let's just be honest. A lot of these people is just the quality concern that I have because of the kind of materials, the contractors they use. Their goal is to buy something and turn it around pretty quick and put it back on the market so they can sell it for profit. So you can imagine that, buying a hardwood floor that it is $2.50 per square foot versus something $4.50. Of course, they're also going to go with the cheaper one. So that's the main concern that I always have with them. Cosmetic problems, right? Those are should be red flags. Definitely you should not be buying a house that is being flipped or it comes from an investor or a flipper and you are not doing a home inspection. That is a huge red flag in my opinion. I recently was made aware of someone that was not working with me, bought a house in Baltimore that it was sold by an investor. And this person was told by the investor/owner that the roof was on the newer side of things, not recently replaced, but it was newer and that had passed inspection. This person bought this house without doing an inspection because there were multiple offers. To the surprise of the new homeowner, previous buyer, it comes to the point that after they move in, they receive a letter from the insurance company saying that the roof doesn't meet their standards and they need to replace the roof. This is, imagine, on top of you paying above asking price, on top of not having to do a home inspection and taking a risk, and who knows what other things are going to be wrong with the house, right? The roof can be one of them, many other things. So be careful with those cosmetic things, because when you are in the process of negotiating your offer and contingencies is when you can actually ask these investors, LLC people, to go ahead and make those repairs so you have some peace of mind. When rushing a job, it's never a good thing, right? Like, this is never a good thing. Cutting corners has never been a good thing. So just to make sure that, you can verify that materials used have been good. So maybe the day if you are allowed to do a home inspection, maybe bring one of your contractors with you at the same time. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but at least you have the peace of mind from the inspector perspective as well as from a contractor perspective. Here in Maryland, there are two ways that you can do a home inspection. And walk and talk is basically the inspector cannot test anything. They only get to walk and talk with you for about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the size, or a full-blown inspection with a whole report that you can have. So if you bring a contractor, that can probably add another layer of this, especially if you're going to be buying a big home, right? That's just very important for you to have that. Now, if you have the opportunity to do a full-blown inspection, do it. Spend the good money. That's the best money you can spend, because at that point, you'd rather know the issues right now than later. Believe me, there have so many people that have thanked me many times because we spend the good money, well, they spend the good money on buying, on the inspection for the purchase of a house. And always look beyond the cosmetics, right? If there are issues with the cosmetic, I can guarantee there's going to be issues with the structure. There's going to be issue with mechanical things. So always pay attention. The cosmetical things are an indication of the kind of labor and materials this contractor or flipper investor used for this property. And the last point is, do not buy a house that has been over improved for the neighborhood that you're going to be buying in. So for example, if these neighborhood houses are an average of 3,500 to 4,500 square feet, and price points are between, let's say, 800 to 925,000. I'm describing Montgomery County, Maryland by saying that. Do not buy a house that it is 10,000 square feet in the same neighborhood and is maybe listed at 1.8. You say, well, Robert, it's appealing, it's nice. But imagine what's going to happen to your house, because there is two total discrepancies, a square footage and price, and your property is always going to be dragged down by these other homes because there's not going to be comparables. So that becomes a huge problem with resale issues, the value and depreciation problems, investment. This can be a risky thing, investments, right? The neighborhood, your house will never appreciate, as I said it, and future sales challenges. I have had many people that bought houses that were super over improved for the neighborhood, and they are the ones actually taking longer to try to sell their home. In my opinion, somebody that buys a house like that, it's over improved, and this example I gave you, houses averages, let's say we're going to use 900 and you bought something for 1.8, most likely your house is going to sell for like 1.4, 1.5 down the road, because by the time, these houses at 900 have to be selling for like a 1.5 for you to get your 1.8. You see now what I'm talking? So gotta be very careful with those things, and always research online what's going on with this property. Why all these over improvements? Why is it what's so necessary? Look into any liens, potential liens that can be against the property, just to make sure that there are no hidden secrets for you down the road. And I'll give you my last one and my bonus one. Never, ever buy a house that it backs to the railroad tracks. Those are the worst purchases you can actually make in your entire lives. I've seen houses here in these area that back to the railroads that take forever. We're not talking even in a good market when anything sells in 1 week. These houses may sell in like 4 or 5 months. Imagine on a slow time, it might take a year to sell a house like this. It's just like you're going to be dealing with noise issues, vibrations, your structure constantly changing. It's not a good idea, period. Okay, we have come to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do me a huge favor. Click that like button, smash that button over there, just to make sure that you are liking this video. Leave me your comments here. What do you think about these type of properties you should never buy when you're looking to upsize? And if you are thinking about making a move to the Maryland, DC, Virginia, Washington, D.C. area in Maryland, let me know. If you want to have a conversation, there is a link there to schedule a free consultation with me, and follow for more. I'll see you guys in the next video next week. Take care. Bye-bye.